Okay, so my name is, for any of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Sowry. For any of you who do know me, you probably have different names for me, but I definitely prefer Dan Sowry. So I'm with the, I guess you want to call it, I'm the SBEEP, or I represent the SBEEP program in the state of Ohio called the Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention. And like all of you, we love our acronyms, so we refer to ourselves as OCAP, and those who work in our program as OCAPers. But what I'm going to talk to you about this morning, and then we're going to turn it over to Allison and to Jenifer Dixon in that state up north of us, is webinars and how you end up putting on an effective webinar, how you market it, how you coordinate and host these webinars. So before we get into that, well, this is kind of like the overview of what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about the needs of the new normal in this virtual environment. I'm going to plug to you guys, my suggestion is if you're using a multiple different types of platforms, I suggest that you go to a single solution platform, and I'll explain why. I'm going to talk about marketing because you can put on the best presentation in the world, but if you don't market it, nobody's going to know it exists and they're not going to show up. Recruiting and coordinating speakers and some of the tips and tricks that we've learned somewhat the hard way, and then results as well. So needs of the new normal, I think one of the big things that's happened in this virtual world is we've had to adjust. And in the past, we've always had in-person type of presentations, we had in-person type of conferences. And while we did do some webinars, they weren't anywhere near to the extent that we're doing them now. And I don't know, the rest of you, I'm guessing that you have had an uptick in webinars while you've been telecommuting, and hopefully many of you are still able to telecommute. But there's challenges in this whole virtual world. How do you keep people's attention? And it's really, really easy for people to fall asleep during the middle of a presentation, let alone when it's virtual. And you can always get webinar fatigue, or you're always just staring at your screens. So that's one of the challenge. How do you keep people engaged? How do you have like an enhanced type of experience for your attendees? Analytics are another huge one. Being able to kind of tell the story of how many people actually showed up. Did they find it valuable? What was your best tool for marketing so you can make improvements in the future? And then the credits and certificates. We always provide a certificate for each one of our presentations or webinars that we do. Continuing education credits, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit more, but continuing education credits are huge right now, at least from what we have found, because normally you could go to an in-person conference, but a lot of those have gone virtual or they just canceled them altogether. And people are really hungry for continuing education credits. We found that those to be very useful. The other thing is you don't necessarily know what people's situation is behind their screen. So how do you keep them engaged? And especially if they have different distractions going on at the exact same time. Many of us are still working from home, and being in your house, you can have all kinds of distractions. You can see the phone sitting there. She's trying to do work on the tablet, trying to pay attention, but then also maybe has their child sitting there asking for attention as well. So lots and lots of challenges. And I think it's important when we put on webinars that we consider all of the needs of the new normal. So when we were looking for a platform, here were a number of different things that we wanted to consider. We wanted something that was easy to use, but not just easy to use for us, but also easy to use for our attendees. Because if it requires a big learning curve, it's even more challenging for us to kind of bring people up to speed. And I don't know about you guys, but in our agency, we are crazy serious about branding. We want to make sure that we have the same look and feel. Our communications people are sticklers on this. So you want a platform that allows you to have that same consistent look and feel, which is another reason why I think, I'm definitely suggesting that you do that you find a single solution type of platform for your webinars. You want to be able also be able to use this platform for not just for webinars, but also for conferences. And I'll talk about a couple conferences that we've recently put on that were virtual. And basically, it's not like a conference where you have concurrent sessions going on in several breakout rooms. We break all of our conferences in, or our conferences are just made up of individual standalone webinars spaced strategically over a period of time. So that way people, you know, schedule permitting, they can always attend and they're not missing anything. Chat feature, again, having that engagement and allowing people to be able to communicate back with the presenter concurrently while they're presenting is I think a must. And kind of tying with that again is live question and answer, where you can feel like you have a front row seat as an attendee. You have a front row seat with your with the presenter. You're the only one they're presenting to, and you have their attention. So you can ask questions, also live polling, and I'll show you some examples of live polling that we do just to keep people engaged. We just put on a sustainability conference last month, virtual sustainability conference, and we went a little crazy. Of the 9 sessions, 6 of them were panel discussions. So that way we could bring in a number of different type of people from different perspectives. And there was a little bit of something for everyone in each individual session. So you want a platform that allows you to do that. Now, this is a good point for me to kind of plug what the state up north, and we're not allowed to say what state it is, but I will tell you it's a state directly north of Ohio. But we have stolen a lot of their ideas. If you could do a webinar as well as the state up north, they have routinely over 1,000 people in each one of their sessions. We've never had over 1,000 people in one of our sessions. The most I think we ever had register was maybe 700-800. But always you want to make sure that whatever the platform is that you have, that you at least have the ability to have that many people in there. You want to be able to replay and record your sessions. What we have found is a lot of people, if they have the time, yes, they can attend the conference or they can attend the webinar during that time. However, they may get pulled off to do something else and they miss it. So while they register, they don't end up showing up. Giving them the recording and having a platform that automatically sends them a recording of that presentation will be helpful for them as well. Having a calendar invite and notification email. So not only can it put the webinar that you have scheduled on their individual calendar, whatever it might be, but then also that the platform will send them notices that, hey, we're gonna, the webinar starts in an hour, or remember you registered for this event, or even maybe as a speaker, hey, remember you're a speaker, you're presenting tomorrow, and having those automatic notifications come to you. Analytics of the attendees. Again, this is really important for continuing education credits. I don't know about all of you in your respective programs, but here at Ohio EPA, we have operator certification, and in the actual Ohio Administrative Code, the actual rule, it states that the presentation has to be up on their screen for 90% of the time. They have to answer all the live polling questions. They have to complete the survey, or they don't get continuing education credit. So building in analytics for your attendees for each of your webinars is key to be able to justify that people are actually paying attention and not just on TikTok the entire time, like I normally am. And I did, is this being recorded? This is not being recorded, right? Oh.
Yes, it is.
Oh, all right, cool. So if we could just scratch that. File sharing is a big one as well. People always ask for the PowerPoint presentation. Can I please get a copy of your slides? Most of us, I think all of us are public entities. It's all public record. You have to provide that anyway. So having the ability to be able to give them helpful documents, and at the very least, the PowerPoint presentation. And then maybe this one goes right up there with the first one of easy to use for importance. Affordability, you need something that's affordable. And that kind of leads into what we've done in the past. So we've used a series of different types of platforms to be able to put on our presentations, our webinars. We used Eventbrite for our registration. We use Cvent or Crowd Compass for networking and engagement. We use SurveyMonkey for the survey afterwards. And I think they are no longer SurveyMonkey. I think they're called something, Ask an Ape. I don't know. They're called something different now. I don't know what they're called, but we've used WebEx in the past, and I think a lot of us have definitely got to know Teams better than we ever did before, certainly when we started working from home. But you can definitely use all these different platforms. Yes, we can use all these different platforms. We can make them work. And heck, with Teams, especially the new version of Teams, you can have up to 10,000 some people in there, so that's good. And we're all familiar with these different platforms. So again, all bonus, but there's definitely some downsides to this as well. Using all of those different platforms, it makes it difficult for not only us, but also for the attendees, where it lacks that streamlined registration. The analytics, yes, you can maybe pull some analytics out of it, but it's very difficult. It's not quite as easy as it would be if you had a single solution platform. And then if you have communications folks that are really sticklers like ours are, of consistent look and feel, when you're using all those different platforms, it's definitely difficult to do. So there's a bazillion different types of platforms out there. I am certainly not advocating any one of them over another. I will tell you the one that we're using is GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar, and we did steal that idea from the state up north. It is not perfect. There are good and bad parts to every single one of these platforms. And if I could figure out how to take all the good parts and get rid of all the bad parts and combine them together, I would probably be making a lot more money than I'm making now. So with this platform, I wanted to show you some examples of these different features that we use just to kind of sell the point of having a single solution type of platform. So registration is included in this platform that we're using. This was a statewide litter campaign, and we coordinated with 3 regulatory agencies plus the governor's office, and they had worked to come up with that slogan, "A little litter is a big problem," and that logo. And what we did in the registration is we're able to use that same consistent look and feel. So it has the same logo, it has the same wonderful colors. You guys can't see me on screen, but that is wonderful, is what I need to say. But you can also add different required fields in there. So if you want to get some more analytics of who your actual audience is, or if you want to reach out to these people, you can customize any one of those fields. For live Q&A, and this is an issue for security I'll get into as well, and I apologize, this is a little blurry. I definitely could have got a better picture, but on this platform, we have the ability for the attendees to send in questions at any point in time, and we can answer them concurrently while the presenter is presenting. So we also have, and I'll talk about this later with selecting speakers, but we've all been in a situation where we've been sitting in a presentation, and if you're like me, you sit in the back of the room and try to hide, but you're not in a front row seat. But in this virtual world, you definitely are in a front row seat. But let's say, the presenter's presenting, and certainly if it's one of us presenting, we love our acronyms, and we quickly cover an acronym, but right then and there, your better half hits you up on text and says, "Hey, Tommy's puking at school. We're going to have to go pick him up," or something. And you're like, "Oh crap, I just missed that real important acronym that they said." This allows the attendee to ask the question concurrently without interrupting, but ask the presenter or the folks behind the scenes, "What was that acronym again?" And you can respond to them instantly. So what we do is we have the presenter presenting, but then we also have subject matter experts behind the scenes. These are the technical people that can answer technical related questions. They know what that acronym was. SBEEP, what the heck does that stand for? But we also have subject matter experts being able to address issues like, hey, my screen's frozen or I can't hear anything. So we can address those issues immediately and it's not interrupting anybody. Now, the other issue the platform that we use allows us to do this like as a web live broadcast or more like as a webcast. We never allow our attendees to unmute themselves or to send in chats or comments that everybody else could get, because as a regulatory agency, we definitely have trolls. Everybody has to deal with trolls out there. And if you don't know what a troll is, Google what a troll is online and you'll see what I'm talking about. But being a regulatory agency, we definitely want to avoid people grandstanding or putting in, inappropriate comments into the middle of our presentations or heckling the presenter or anything like that. So we do not allow people to turn off their mics or to send in questions that the entire audience can read. Only we can see those folks. All right, live polling. And we use live polling for a number of different reasons. In a lot of our presentations, we send in live polling in the very beginning just to kind of figure out, where are you guys coming from? Are you a business? Are you large business, small business? Are you in a manufacturing sector? Is this a community? Basically getting to know who your audience is. And that can be very helpful for the presenter then to gear their presentation accordingly, even on the fly. Now, we also use it for other reasons. We can use these live polls as like icebreakers. So here's an example of an icebreaker that we put up, and I'm really surprised that people fight over this one as much. Clearly, pineapple does not belong on pizza. It should be outlawed, in my opinion. But it is amazing how many people think that it should be on there. And then the nice thing is when you ask these questions, you can see it, even the smirk on her face. 66% of people, clearly the majority, do not feel that pineapple belongs on pizza. And so this allows people to interact, feel engaged, feel like their actual vote counted, and they were actively engaged in that webinar. So the next thing is analytics, and it's really important to be able to understand what you are doing now and have a baseline and be able to see where you're going in the future. There's a number of different ways that you can use analytics. Obviously, we talked about continuing education credits. This is an example of our 3-week-long virtual compliance assistance conference we put on last fall. And we had about 10,000 people that registered, about 7,600 people that actually attended. You will always get somewhere between 70 and 80% of those who register versus those who attend. So that's very normal to have somewhere around 75%. But you can kind of see in the lines below, the blue line of those who registered and the purple line of those who actually attended. You can kind of see the ups and downs as we put on this 3-week-long virtual conference where we did one session in the morning, one session in the afternoon on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for 3 weeks long. Branding and colors, again, I talked about this earlier. Our communications folks are sticklers to this. Having a platform, a single solution platform, allows you to use your own agency logo. On the right-hand side under featured image, this is a logo, a different graphic. We have to be careful using the word logo because it gets our people all wound up, our comms people. But this was our compliance assistance conference, reaching new heights in compliance. And that was kind of the theme, like an aviation type of thing. So you can put like featured images in there, very much like that. A little litter is a big problem type of featured image. And then you can put in the specific, approved agency colors or your organization's colors as well. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about marketing. At Ohio EPA, we put on at least 2 webinars every single month. And inevitably, it ends up turning into 3 or 4 webinars every single month. But we have 2 main series. And this first one we stole from that state up north yet again. A lot of kudos to what they've been doing. I think that they're definitely a leader among SBEEPs in terms of really putting on popular webinars and hitting their audience and continuing to build on that momentum. So We stole this from them. I think they call it Local Leader Webinar Series or something. We made that a subtitle. We call it In Your Community. Regardless, we totally stole it from them. But what it is it's for elected officials. So it could be, township trustees, county commissioners, mayors, city planners, whomever, to be able to figure out various types of issues in their community, environmental type of issues. And here's some examples. We have a training tab on our webpage, and we use the same type of information as our e-blast and stuff we put on social media, which I'll cover here in a second. So this was an example of one that we just did a couple weeks ago on, dumping in your community. We always try to put the speaker's face on there. So Kelly, she was the main presenter. Kevin was more the subject matter expert behind the scenes. We have one coming up of fighting contamination in your recycling containers in your community coming up on the 9th, and we have Jill Martin there. Here's another one we have coming up on the 18th of mosquito control grant application. So these are just some examples that we put together. Then we also have a technical series. And like I said, we try to do at least one in your community and one technical series in every month. But here I'm demonstrating we've done 2 technicals already just this month. So we had Kim Churchill from Region 5 talk about SPCC, and Heather McNerney as well, and then also Mark Howard from headquarters. And then Ashley Ward, she put on a presentation, was it just last week, a week ago today, on National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permitting and new rules and stuff like that. These were very, very, very popular. I want to say we had about 600-700 people registered for the SPCC and maybe 400 or 500 people for the NPDES. Like I said, we still have yet to reach that state up north type of numbers, but we're really pleased with where we're going with this. So in terms of social media, we use social media as well. I will tell you that we have found that email and e-blast is the best way to reach your audience. Social media is slowly getting there. And I think as we gain more popularity in social media, it'll happen more and more and more and gain more momentum. But here's an example of a tweet that we sent out. So we use Twitter, we use Instagram, and we use LinkedIn primarily as our social media platforms. Here is that A Little Litter is a Big Problem, that litter campaign, where we had the governor's office and then 3 of our cabinet level directors for regulatory agencies all speaking about that. All kinds of hashtags and stuff. I don't know what that means, but somehow that gets more people's attention. Offering CEUs, and this is also, I want to kind of show a couple of different things on this slide here. So this is our e-binder, as we call it. So our virtual compliance assistance conference we put on last fall, we had it was 3 weeks of sessions. Remember from the analytics slide, 3 weeks of sessions. So we always had one session in the morning. You can see part 1 on hazardous waste requirements was from 10 to 11. Part 2 was from 1 to 2. We spaced those out on purpose. They can register by clicking on the register button down, the green button there below. They can go back to the agenda and see everything. They can click on Christy's picture or on her name and get her bio. So this is totally interactive. But the one thing I wanted to point out is the continuing education credits. Again, I think that those things are vital. If you're not getting continuing education credits pre-approved for your sessions, I highly encourage you to do so, as you would definitely draw a larger audience. So listing those out so folks know, and then using that in your marketing materials can help as well. In terms of building momentum, at the end of every single one of our webinars, we always plug the next webinars that are coming up. So this was our sustainability conference we just did last month. This was literally at the end of our first keynote session. So we had every one of our sessions coming up besides that first one, and we list them all out and then direct people back to our webpage, always building that momentum. Now, I was telling you the email, we found email is the best. We seem to get the most response back from our email. What we also do is to kind of build up momentum. So if you have 400 or 500 people in a webinar, you definitely want to take that captive audience right there and hopefully get them to sign up for the next session that you have coming. So you're continuing to build on that e-blast list that you have of folks that are interesting. So we're real creative here in Ohio, and we came up with a family bathroom symbol as our customer support center. So check that out at the top. I'm not really sure how a family bathroom symbol leads you to go to sign up for a webinar, but regardless, that's what we're doing. Hopefully none of my comms people are on here right now, because they definitely love me already, and especially for making that plug. But what we do is we continually try to get people to sign up to get notice about our upcoming webinars. So we automatically keep building and building and building that momentum with our e-blast list. All right, let's switch gears again. I want to talk about recruiting and coordinating with speakers. And the first are the bigger challenges, maybe the biggest challenge we have, and I'm guessing a lot of you as well, are speaker challenges and subject matter experts. So we know our stuff. A lot of us are scientists, we're engineers, we're chemists, we're whatever. But in being those types of folks, some people are really good at articulating really convoluted stuff to the layman. Others, they know the detail in and out. You could ask them any question and they know the answer, but maybe they're not the best presenter. So we always have a challenge, certainly at an in-person conference you do, of people losing interest, falling asleep, not paying attention, whatever it might be. So we want to have, and I think it's one of our biggest challenges, is making sure that we have very engaging speakers, and then we put our subject matter experts, maybe the people that know it in and out, but aren't the best at the delivery. We put them behind the scenes answering questions concurrently while the presenter is presenting. Let's go back there. Okay, so engaging slides. This is a slide that I put together earlier in my career. It was literally last month. No, I'm just kidding. But I put this together earlier in my career, let's say, and literally, we want to get it right. We want to state exactly what the rule says. We don't want to skim over it for fear that we're misrepresenting what the requirement is. But in so doing, we put all words on a black and white screen, and then we read off of them, especially if it's not a very engaging type of speaker and they're nervous and they just read off the slides. Nobody can read off or watch somebody else read off the damn slides. Did I say damn? Is this being recorded? Allison, we need to scratch that one as well. Probably that family bathroom symbol needs to be scratched out. But anyway, what is better is to at least have some pictures that illustrate what your points are. Then your points should not be what you're reading off of. They need to be just like a placeholder kind of reminder to get the point. Like when I say less than 2,500 square feet, then I explain more what that is. I'm not putting all of the verbiage in there. But having some pictures to kind of help illustrate the point, I think is very helpful. But I think the best presentations out there are ones with just pictures or more pictures than there are words. You can illustrate far more in a virtual environment because a lot of us, we're virtual learner. I'm not virtual learners. We're visual learners in a virtual world. You're not standing up in front of these people, singing and dancing, where they at least can be entertained by what outfit you picked out that day, or the fact that your hair's all messed up, or you have something between your teeth, or your zipper's down, or something. Or they're sitting like in a conference room, and you know how most conferences are. The conference, the hotel place, I don't know who decorates those, but whoever does, I think they're tripping or something, because the carpet, like the patterns that they come up with. So at least the attendees can kind of look at that. But in this virtual world, they're just stuck staring at the screen. And if you just put words up on the screen, you're going to lose these people instantly. Another technique that we've done is putting something on the slide that does not, at least at first notice or first glance, you're like, what on earth is that cute little turtle doing? It looks like a baby tortoise trying to take a strawberry into its mouth all at once. It's hilarious. It's adorable. I've used this in past presentations, and this is definitely early in my career because the bottom right-hand corner is an illegal Ohio EPA logo. That is not acceptable. We cannot use that as prior administration stuff. But what I would do is I would say, isn't it adorable? Isn't that cute? That little tortoise trying to eat that big strawberry, but there's nothing cute about acute hazardous waste. So it's kind of illustrating that point. This is boring stuff, right? Talking about hazardous waste and hazardous waste codes is, you can easily lose people. But what I do later on is the people focus in on that picture, and then they remember it. So later on in the presentation, when I'm like, remember acute hazardous waste and that cute little turtle trying to eat the big strawberry, people go, oh yeah. And you can, at least visually, at least when you're in front of people, you can see the light bulb go on, and they're like, yeah. So using pictures to really illustrate your points and kind of keep their attention, I think, is very important. Dry runs are huge. We literally do a dry run for every single one of our webinars, every single one. Here's one that we have scheduled for Monday morning, and this is going to be on our Recycling Ohio Grant Kickoff webinar that we have coming up. But we always do a dry run, and we want to ensure two main things. Number one is timing. We want to make sure, especially with continuing education credits, if you've approved for 1 hour of continuing education and you go a half an hour, people are going to say, well, am I going to get credit? And trust me, when you get those questions coming in the questions pane, you'll have 200 or 300 people going, well, wait a minute, I still want my credit. And then if you go over a little bit by a half an hour, and it's an hour and a half or 2 hours, then they're like, I don't want just an hour, I want an hour and a half of credit. These people are fighting for their continuing education. So timing is of utmost importance. But the other thing, and this ties into training tools, is making sure that your presenters, your subject matter experts, your panelists, your keynotes, they understand the platform. They understand how to turn on and off their camera, how to mute themselves, how to advance through the slides, that sort of thing. This is a lot of work to do, and we're very lucky. And I think she is on here right now. Lexi Andrews does a lot of work on our end to put together these training tools to show people, how do you save this to your computer? How do you log in? How do you turn your mic on and off? Here's an example of like even how you end up adding it to your calendar and what button you click on. This might seem like it's intuitive enough. You don't need to explain all this, but believe me, there's enough people out there that are not familiar with your platform. And if you put the extra time into explaining this stuff, you'll make your webinar go that much more smooth. Last thing I want to talk about is positive feedback. So we always provide a survey at the end of our webinars. And we use it for a few different reasons, obviously to get the feedback, but we also use it for continuing education credits. So if we have like a registered sanitarian and we want to get their ID number, we will submit it on their behalf to the Ohio Department of Health, who would then get them that credit as a registered sanitarian. So we'll ask that in the survey, please provide your ID number, and then we will send that off. But we also want to get feedback from our attendees to be able to provide that back to, could be our management, to maybe justify getting a better single solution platform of, look at all these positive comments that we're getting back from our attendees. And this is, this is from our recent sustainability conference of saying, wow, you guys have really taken what would normally been an in-person type of conference, and you've really adapted to this virtual world. Kudos to you. So the last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll open it up for any type of questions, and certainly give Allison and Jenifer a chance to weigh in on their perspectives. But I wanted to talk real quickly about our results and kind of where we've been and where we are now. In 2019, we put on about 24 webinars, again, like 2 every month. We had about 1,000 people total in 2019, collectively for the entire year. In 2020, we had well over 5,000. We did put on more webinars, but that's excluding the Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference, which I'll highlight here in a second. This year, we're over 12,000 people so far that have attended our webinars. So this is the needs of the new normal, and we're definitely hitting on something here. So let me back up. So the virtual compliance assistance conference we put on last fall, Lexi put this slide, this graphic together in the background. We ended up reaching 37 states and provinces. So nationwide and in North America, as far north as Ontario, as far south as Puerto Rico, as far west as California. We are reaching a huge number of people, I think, because we are spacing our webinars over convenient times. It doesn't cost anything. There's continuing education credits. People don't have to secure travel. They don't have to spend overnight. It's a win-win, and these people can get the information that they're looking for. A lot of our attendees on our technical webinars are environmental health and safety specialists. And as I know all of you are already aware, those folks may have their headquarters may be in a different state than the actual facilities are that they manage. But their ability to be able to log in, get the information they need, and not have to maybe tip their hat to the agency or to their own management of, I have no idea what I'm doing in this job. They are the people that you want to target to get into your webinars. They can get all the information and they have the contacts with the speakers and kind of build on that, continuing that conversation. And with our sustainability conference, we ended up reaching, in the past, what was it, 2017, we had 100 people. In 2019, we had 200 people. And then we just put ours on last month. We had about, I want to say, and Lexi's going to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was around 2,300 people that registered and about 1,600 to 1,700 people that actually attended. But we ended up had representatives from 111 cities throughout Ohio, which never, ever, ever would have happened if we tried to put that on in an in-person type of conference. So last thought is, with our webinars, we're definitely starting to change the collaboration, maybe even the view of our agency of, we're not an agency that's just, hey, we'll tell you when you're wrong, big stick type of personality or type of perception, but that we are here trying to explain these regulations and work in collaboration with our regulated, with the regulated community to build those partnerships and ultimately to ensure compliance. So that is all I have. I will stop talking, and any questions that you guys have, I'll turn myself on camera now, and we can start the conversation.
I had a lot of questions, Dan, that I actually wrote down about what you were saying, just to kind of highlight some of the things that I thought might be, you might want to like be able to dig a little deeper into, or maybe you could add some clarity. So, but first of all, that was a great overview of how to do a good webinar, especially for folks that aren't doing it as often and maybe want to get into it a little bit more. I think that's going to be really valuable for folks. But I kind of wanted, first I wanted to say we do get royalties. We are the state up north. We do get royalties from Ohio for all their webinars, just putting that out there. But besides that, I know that back when the pandemic started and you guys were kind of figuring out what sort of platform you wanted to use for your webinars and to do these kinds of trainings, how did you convince your upper management to go in a certain direction? I think that's always kind of one of the things. It's like, if you're a state that you know you don't have the tools that you need, how do you convince management that these are the tools you need, or you need these other tools? Like, what kind of words or discussion or emphasis did you put on that to really get your upper management to get on board with this?
So actually, the person who can sell just about anything to our management, Lexi Andrews, is part of our team. And that's where we're very fortunate, is that she's very good at presenting. She's very good at selling. And what we did was specifically, Jenifer, we knew the triggers that our management cared about. They wanted a consistent look and feel. They wanted more people to feel like they were engaged, and money is huge. WebEx we were using in the past, it was costing a lot. We had over 50 licenses. we were spending about 10 times what we're spending now, plus SurveyMonkey, plus Eventbrite, plus Cvent. So we were using all of these different platforms. It was a cost savings. It was a consistent branding look and feel. We can bring more enhanced user experience, and we can meet the needs of the new normal. And that's what did it. It cost less, and we were able to provide better content.
Well, and then once you guys actually implemented, it proved its value, which was nice. So I'm glad that it didn't, end up letting your management team down. And Allison, I don't want to take over your facilitating role, but I did see that Crystal had a question. She wanted to know if your presentation was PowerPoint or were you using a different platform there, what you were just showing.
We use PowerPoint exclusively for all of our webinars. And that's what I just used, was just PowerPoint.
It just looked really cool in Zoom. Looked nice.
Oh, cool.
So I had a couple other, just maybe some kind of add-ons to some of the points that you were making that I thought might be helpful. So one of the things that you were talking really about emphasizing your upcoming webinars. So like, for instance, this morning, our team did 3 webinars this morning for different areas. And that doesn't always happen, but just this morning, that just happened to be scheduling wise. One of the questions that we get asked a lot up here is like, how do you get the word out to people? How do you get people engaged? And so Dan kind of touched on this too, is like using that resource, that super valuable resource that you have with the attendees that have come to your other ones. And it's time and it's building. I talked to our marketing person this morning, and she said on our training and outreach listserv, we have 31,000 people. But that didn't happen over a year. That happened over years. So we have people that are excited about the trainings that we have. They know that our trainings are valuable, they're effective, they're to the point, they're accurate. And so that's kind of like that reputation building that you talked about that I thought was really, really super important. And one of the things that you mentioned too was, sorry, of course, they're gonna start barking. Hold on. I think my son just got home. So one of the things that you mentioned was putting up that slide that says like, here's what we have coming up next. Here's what we have coming down the pipe. Here's what we have next week. Here's the next one in the series. And I think when you do a series, a really effective way to get folks to sign up for that next one, if they haven't done it, is share the link in the chat at the end. Like actually just push it out there to them. They're there. If they liked what you just did, or even if they were only kind of listening, they definitely will sign up and they'll appreciate you being that forward. So just like a little, that's just like a little another tip, you're sharing it on the screen, but they still have to have some effort either to be watching their email or go to a website or whatever, making it as easy for them as possible to engage with you, which Dan talked about a long laundry list of things that you can do to do that aren't a lot of effort, right? So I wanted to kind of talk about that. Then there was another thing that you brought up, which I thought was also really, really important. And I wanted to ask you guys a question about this. And I don't know if anybody else can chime in, because I know it's not like you guys are listening to this talk right now because you don't do webinars. All of you do these kinds of conversations. So from your perspective, Dan, and anybody else that wants to chime in, when you have staff that you're working with that are going to be presenters, and then you also have like these, oh, you know what? I think I locked the door. That's why. Hold on.
So one of the points that she was making is, putting something into the chat. And sorry, Jenifer, I'm just jumping in just to
no, that's fine.
Fill the gap. But back to what you were saying about chatting in and sending it to your audience during the actual webinar of here's the next upcoming, here's the registration link. Yes, we absolutely do that. On top of, we send them an email afterwards to both those who registered and those who attended. We send them 2 different types of emails. The platform that we're using allows us to customize it however we want. And we're always plugging the next ones every single time. If you would like to learn more about upcoming series in your community of local leaders, here's where you need to go and sign up. So, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I did lock my son out of the house, but he could have went to a different door or something instead of just letting the dogs bark since I wasn't coming. But he's learning. He'll be 21 soon. He's going to get his 21-year-old driver's license. So he's got to start learning about this stuff at some point. Anyway, so I wanted to ask about getting your technical experts and your speakers that are going to be presenting sort of like on the how do you do a good presentation page, because a lot of them, that's not like in their natural skill set. So wondering how much time do you think that you guys do on a webinar, say when you are trying to either review the presentation, if you do that and make suggestions, counsel your presenters on sort of how to talk about a certain topic, especially if it needs to be maybe more plain language than what they're used to, or it needs to be more technical, or kind of finding that balance. I just was wanting to know, like, to what degree do you dive into that, and maybe how much time you think you might spend on that? Because I think, you know, our time is really valuable. Donovan mentioned 250, you know, meetings. That's more than outreach. We have these other things we have to do. So how much time do you actually put into getting ready for these?
A lot. I don't know the exact number, but I would say for a 1 hour session, there's at least 6 hours of prep to put it together. Once you kind of have a well-oiled machine, it's not quite as involved as you would think. But to your point, when you get an external speaker, and not external outside of the agency, external outside of our SB program, it's difficult to get, and you know, beggars can't be choosy, right? So you got to be careful with these people and saying, hey, your presentation's awful. Can you still present for us? But you got to change it our way. So it's difficult. It's a dance. Then on top of it, we have to pack every single PowerPoint past our communications folks, and it has to have a consistent look and feel, and then they want to change it. There's another added time in there. Then we have 2 hours that we block off for a dry run where we go through everything. If they're not familiar with it, maybe we have to schedule another dry run. So it's a lot of preparation up front. And what we always want to avoid is it's easy to wash, rinse, repeat, grab the same presentation that you did the last 3 years and just put that up on the screen and run through it, blah, 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 blah. Adding in new live polling questions to kind of engage the audience, adding in some graphics. And again, it's a dance, because when these speakers that you don't have control over necessarily, they're not under your shop, you got to somehow convince them that your presentation definitely has some room for improvement, but not honk them off to the point where they go, screw this, I'm never doing it again. And you have to go and find new speakers. I think the key is finding those good speakers and never letting go of them and keeping them in good graces.
Well, that's a really good point too, because you had mentioned the positive feedback. And I think, so first of all, about presentation and coaching speakers, which it really is, that's a really good way to put it. It is a dance, it's a balance. So part of it is just building up clout in your agency, right? So as you guys have gone through and you had this very successful event, and then you had another successful event, the staff in the agency know that you guys are the ones that know what you're doing. I mean, we've seen that in our section. And I know one of my coworkers, Anita Singh, is on, and we've seen that as we work with our different media folks, like they know that we know how to get the message out. So even though they might feel like a little bit twinged about us making a comment on how they're presenting something, or maybe the graphic that they're using, ultimately, most of them don't push back too hard, because they know that that's kind of like our job, right? So we can take that off their shoulders by giving them advice and making suggestions and making tweaks and balancing words. And I always say, you know, words matter in these things. So you could say it like that, but what if you said it like this? How is that going to sound, and how is that going to feel for folks coming on? So, but getting back to that positive feedback, I think there's another thing that the surveys really do that can help you build clout in your agency. And that is, if you have a good speaker and they do a great job, and I know I've seen you do this with your staff before, Dan, and I think it's different, your staff, than someone outside of your SB program or outside of your, you know, the section that you work with, is when I get good feedback about speakers that I work with, I make sure to send them those specific feedback, the specific thing that someone said, the best thing that I saw. If someone said 20 things, I pick what I think is best. I send it to them. I send it to their supervisor. I send it to their supervisor's supervisor. And I say,
Yep.
this person did an amazing job. They really helped us out. They represented the agency very well. They were able to do all of these things in this time frame. And it builds clout outside of your SB program, which I know a lot of us kind of struggle with sometimes, is like, how do we, especially like, I know, Sarah, you said you're from Illinois, just always makes me think of Illinois and how they struggle because they're like in a whole different place than the agency is. So for them, getting agency people to have conversations, it's really challenging. So those kinds of like little things just sort of build that trust intrinsically over time, which I think is really, really important. So don't forget that that's also a tool in your toolbox. It's another thing that takes time. It takes effort. It's got to be part of that checklist maybe that you do, that you keep for yourself after the webinars. And when I know that speakers will get nervous about doing things like this, but really you have, as the organizer of it, you have so much more pressure on your shoulders because you're delivering a product and you want that product to be valuable. So I have one more question and then I promise I'll stop talking for a minute. But my question was, so when it comes to like value, so are you charging for any of your webinars? And if you are, how do you decide what ones you are and what ones you aren't? Because we've just recently started charging for some small amounts of money. And I just was wondering if you guys are doing that to sort of like add value and things like that.
No, and I never want to charge for it either. I feel that we are a public servant and it is our duty to provide explanation of these rules that we are then holding the regulated community responsible for complying with. The moment we start charging, I don't think that adds value at all. In fact, I think it's a deterrent. And that's the other thing that I'm kind of seeing with the needs of the new normal. You know, we went from we were going to have a compliance assistance conference. It was the last day in March, first day in April 2020. And we all know what happened 2 weeks before that. We had 500 people registered for that in-person conference. Each one of those individuals would have got 1/5 of the actual content because we had 5 breakout rooms. So each person has to decide, I only can go to one because all 5 of them are happening at the exact same time. When we switched to the virtual, we had over 10,000 people that registered and 7,600 people that actually attended, and they got all of the content they could possibly want. And to answer Sarah's question in the chat, we send the recordings to literally everyone. So we send it to those who registered, those who attended, everybody. Then we also take the recordings and we put them on our agency's YouTube channel so anybody can watch them at a later time. And what we have found is that we might have, 500 people that were in the actual webinar. We'll have another 500 people that viewed the webinar afterwards or used it for a training tool in their organization. So those numbers just continue to go and grow and grow. And that's why I was saying that having a platform that allows you to record and send that recording out and then take the initiative to put it on your agency's YouTube channel or whatever to make it even more readily apparent. The next step I'd really, and this is something I'd like to do in 2022, is to start create small informational type of videos that are really short little snippets of what would be covered in a webinar. Like, do I need an air permit? Or how do I apply for an air permit? What's the steps? In 3 to 5 minutes, putting that together and eventually creating an external training type of catalog for EHS, probably more than likely EHS folks, to really understand all of these regulations. So, here I am talking about all of these webinars. I really think that webinars are somewhat passe, and we need to go smaller bits of information that's more digestible versus an hour-long type of presentation.
So I was just looking to see if we had any other questions in the chat. Do you guys want to just talk? Anybody want to have questions for Dan? Otherwise, I'm sure we can just keep blathering on.
And Allison, I didn't know if there were any other points that you wanted to bring up as well.
Honestly, kind of just letting you two roll. I think you're covering a lot. So, so Sarah's got her hand up. Sarah, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just didn't know if we want to stop recording, if we're just going to start chit-chatting and discussing things, or we're going to continue, because I do have some questions and discussion points.
I'd say keep recording because sometimes the discussion brings up really specific points.
Are you gonna say bad things like Dan did, Sarah, that we should stop
I
recording, or are you gonna be good?
Well, my family is originally from Ohio, but I tend to say the word Michigan. All right, let's get back to roll. All right, so I wanted to, I love Dan's comment about shorter webinars and not really call them webinars, but I'm kind of thinking the same way. I'm thinking about creating 15 to 20-minute max presentations that I record and then post those, and whether or not that's worth my time, because it's really easy for me to present something versus trying to set up a day for everyone to attend, get my speakers, set up the agenda, versus me just saying, hey, here's this rule that you need to be aware of, or here's what I see in the field that you need to be aware of. I can put those together really a lot faster than putting together an hour presentation. But wondering if other people have thought about that too. Jeremy has his hand up next.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, awesome presentation, was great. And I apologize if you already covered this because I was kind of multitasking in the background. How do you come up with, dead honesty, Jenifer, how do you come up with content for either of your webinars or training things or whatever? Do you use like the flavor of the month, or do you use like a central topic? I heard Dan say like, steps for permitting or something like that, but how would you figure out what would be the best way to attract like a good audience, a nice sizable audience?
So what we do is that's where your analytics really come into play. Being able to see like how many people are attending a certain session. Air permitting, hazardous waste, and stormwater are the big topics that we always, and SPCC, and we don't have delegated authority to carry out SPCC, nor do I think most of us do. But those are the hot topics that we see over and over and over again. Construction, stormwater, that's something that we try to always do in the spring. Demolition type of things, asbestos type of related type of trainings, again, in the springtime. Boat washing, something that we do more in the fall because that's when marinas are starting to put boats away for dry dock storage and doing the power washing. So we time things based on certain regulations or, types of activities that occur out there. But again, we really go back to our analytics. And we look at what are the most, we've been doing webinars for a couple of decades now. We've been doing conferences for a couple of decades. So we know those hot topics that people just can't seem to get enough of. And that's how we come up with our list. If there's new issues like EJ or other types of emerging issues that are becoming more of a priority, certainly that's something that we'll incorporate.
It always seems like it could be a finite list of things, but it never is, because you can take and chunk it out into something and go really detailed, or you can give something broad, or you can combine things and have those kind of panel discussions. We seem to get invited a lot to do sort of broad panel discussions for different groups of people, like especially when it comes to like municipalities and things like that, where they don't understand anything really about us, different industry groups, things like that. I mean, I think a good idea, Jeremy, honestly, is like go fishing in what the other states are doing. Like not literally fishing, because that'd be weird, but you know what I mean? Like do what Dan says. We should be stealing from each other ideas. Like if something's working for this group of people, it probably would work for you if they're getting good feedback. And maybe that's something that we could even do in this group of people, is just say like, what's your heavy hitters? What are your best things, and maybe not like your most common, like hazardous waste. Like I think that could be one you could do monthly and you'd always have more people, right? But like, what are your heavy hitters? What are your good things that maybe someone didn't think of? Was there like a specific rule or regulation? Like I think for us, We always get questions on emergency generators. People don't get those rules because they're stupid, but not the people, the rules are stupid. People are fine. But like those kinds of things where people might not have thought of it, even looking at content that other people have out there, videos, like Dan said, like, could you watch a video that maybe is something broader or more all encompassing and be like, yeah, we should be talking about that in our state too. So that's kind of where I would go. And I think the feedback from industry or your other stakeholders is really valuable as well. Donovan, you had your hand up.
And
Sorry.
then Jeremy, another thing that we do is our surveys. We ask people, what are some other topics that you would be interested in hearing about in the future? So we'll take all of that analytics and, you know, the popularity of whatever, you know, is moving and shaking at that time. And that's how we kind of base what we're going to do. And we try to lay out our entire year's worth of webinars at the end of the year. But then inevitably we end up switching stuff around, we adding more stuff in. And that's why ideally we start with 2 webinars a month, but we always end up with at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's all very helpful. Thank you. Because I have a webinar coming up on Tuesday and I haven't even started my PowerPoint yet. So you two both gave me a lot of good points to put together and reach out. But unfortunately, I don't have the analytics to really know what they're looking for. So, but yeah, I'll touch on all the basics and maybe venture over to your state websites and figure out what other information I can put together. So thank you.
So as for the short recorded, that's definitely something that could be done easily enough. But I would, unless you're sort of filling in a gap, I think that might be better for posting to your website and then sharing through your social media. Or if you're part of a panel group and you have 4 people and you all have to speak within 15 minutes, then definitely that's where those come in really great. Or if it's a topic that you're fairly used to and in a conference you're suddenly running out of time because somebody else went long, you can actually use that to adjust the time back. There's a lot of reasons for short ones, but definitely it definitely needs to be very focused to keep the attention. One of the other things that I think Dan touched on a little bit that we were definitely present for recently on this week's conference is sound. Especially if you're doing a hybrid meeting where some people are in person and some people are online, need to make sure that sound quality is good for those that are in person. We had a group that was supposed to be a panel discussion and sound quality was lousy for the first part of it. But once we went to a more online platform, it was very well done. We did hit, the other thing is if there are going to be breakout rooms, those need to be sort of practiced ahead of time. Speaking of, I need to go to practice for breakout rooms. So we'll see you all later.
And it looks like we are over time too. This was only supposed to go for an hour, right?
Yeah, this was
Okay.
scheduled
That's
to
what I thought.
11. I figured if anybody still had questions and wanted to stay on, we could go through those. If you have time, Dan and I can't talk today, Dan and Jennifer to stay on. If
Well,
not, we can
that's
go
all
ahead and
right,
wrap up.
Allison, but I have like 5 baby kitties that need fed because it's noon here and is their lunchtime and they are like, please come feed us now, lady. So I do need to jump off so I can take care of that before my next lovely meeting of the afternoon.
And I can definitely stick on for a few minutes. The other thing is feel free to reach out to me directly. Lexi Andrews as well. She's my right-hand person. She's instrumental in carrying out these webinars and make them as successful as they are.
She's like the woman behind the curtain.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
And
Sort of
we're
hot.
starting to have people hop off. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, Dan and Jennifer, for presenting. It was great to hear from you both. This will be posted on YouTube shortly. I'm not sure exactly when, but it will be posted on the YouTube channel and on the website.
Thanks a lot, Allison. Appreciate you putting this together and being patient with us. We'll talk to you guys all later.